But Patreon is where we start. Ben says, hi, Jarrod. As we know, not everyone in cricket wants their share of the sport to go to diminish. Big three. If you were given complete control over cricket with the goal of getting more countries and people watching, playing exactly, what would you do apart from Olympics? That's too easy. Yeah, I mean, Olympics is the first place you would go. The other thing is expanding World Cups, but really now, I think for cricket, the most obvious thing is leagues, right? Of getting as many leagues as possible out there. So let's say you're talking about international cricket rather than T20 cricket or anything else. You'd really be looking at having, Test Division 1, Test Division 2, Test Division 3, with T20 cricket as well, expanding these sorts of things, coming up with other league ideas, having international cricket leagues perhaps as well, subsidizing leagues in different countries, all these sorts of things, perhaps, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a country that might want to do this, but maybe, the West Indies could have had two separate CPLs in a year, right? They could have had one in Canada or America and one in the West Indies. There's plenty of different things you could do to subsidize these sorts of things and get players out there. The Olympics is the most obvious one, but the other thing is just getting rid of, I think one thing I've noticed, and you'd have to talk to more Andrew Nixon's, Bertus de Jongs, those sorts of people, about this directly, but when you look at how many T20s are being played now around the world by international teams, something as simple as allowing any international team to play T20 international, which is obvious. Why could they never not play in a T20 international? Was a huge thing, and I think that certainly changed international cricket. I think for women and for men, you could do the same with Test cricket and the same with ODIs. If there shouldn't be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 test playing nations. There should be as many test playing nations who want to play a 4-day or more red ball game. There's absolutely no issue with that. If the only argument is that it would cloud up the stats, it's that old argument about the number one goal scorer in football for all those years was some Iranian that no one knew. The stats is nothing. It's absolute nonsense. And you hear that the stats is always brought up. The people who are really worried about the stats being mixed up aren't the people who even use the stats, right? Because if you do, it's pretty easy just to go, okay, well, we're just looking at the top 15 ranked teams or the top 10 ranked teams or the 8 teams in Division 1 or whatever it may be. All these things are fairly simple to do. But yeah, I do think taking away, I think cricket's biggest issue, and it was done on purpose. It was done by people who like gentlemen's clubs, was making cricket into a gentlemen's club. It was part of the England/South African mindset when they started the Imperial Cricket Conference, which meant that they could decide on who would be members and who wouldn't be. And that has held back cricket as much. I'm not sure any other sport has been held back more by what was a fairly small decision over 100 years ago. Trying to think, I suppose that there's been some others in some other sports as well, but it's absolutely huge, and it was huge on two points of view. The first is that if you are, I don't know, let's say Argentina, America, or some of the other sports, Kenya, some of the other countries, Kenya, Denmark, whatever, Fiji, all these countries have been good at cricket at various times, or have had good players, or have had golden eras or whatever. But the reason that cricket didn't develop in that country is they weren't playing it at the highest level. And I don't even mean they weren't playing it against the best teams, because you don't necessarily need to do that. But playing a first-class game is just not the same as a test game. And it doesn't get people as excited. And it shouldn't. It's an exclusionary thing. So if you want more people around the world to get more involved in cricket, the first thing to do is get rid of all this stupid status. If you're playing a 5-day game or a 4-day game with a red ball or a pink ball, etc., following the ICC's basic playing conditions, it is a test match, right? If you're a nation versus nation, it is a test match, right? Or an international game. The idea that these aren't thought of as international games is idiotic, and so many ways has cricket shot itself in the foot by coming up with these arbitrary rules. And for those who don't know, test cricket it's ridiculous. Anyway, there are plenty of test matches. Australia played New Zealand in, was it 1948, whenever that game was? 1949? 1946. 1946. I'll get it right eventually. I think that's right. They played them in a game that they didn't consider a test match. All the early South African games weren't considered test matches. It's arbitrary anyway, right? So take that away, have it in divisions. It's fine. Manan says, cricket in Hindi is called Gol Gotam Lakad Di Dana Da. I mean, what? I mean, that's why it hasn't caught on. That's way too long. Are there any other different names like that for cricket in other countries and languages? I'm sure there are. I think there's certainly some words in I can't do it like Osa that I've heard before. But yeah, I think a few different places have different names for cricket. But I think cricket is one of those words that,